At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jonathan Stoops. Mr. Stoops, we are honored that you are here with us today, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you again. Have you guys ever tried to make a lifestyle change and failed? Pretty sure we've all been there, right? We've laid out some goals, maybe a New Year's resolution that's just around the corner, right? And then over the course of months or weeks or even days, it just kind of faded, slipped through our fingers. We didn't make it happen. Right? Well, our topic today, Atomic Habits, based on a book by the same title, Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results by James Clear, will give you the tools to be successful in making sustainable change. Now, I'm excited to share this topic with you. We do have a workbook that we have distributed. We'll be distributing it via email. It's also in the chat. Jesse's going to drop that in the chat for you. And if you want to go deeper on this topic down the road, I know you can find a condensed version of the book in Skillsoft through TMS. You can also find the audiobook on YouTube. So a lot of resources out there for you. As Jesse mentioned, we will take questions. I'd like you to hold questions till the end if possible, but certainly drop them in the chat. I have a couple of peers that will be collecting those questions so that we can revisit them at the end. All right. As Jesse mentioned, my name is Jonathan Stoops, and I am a Learning Management Officer here with the Learning and Development Division in HCS. I've been with the VA for 13 years now. 8 of those years I spent as a supervisor out in the field and also served as a rater. Prior to joining the VA, I have a decade of experience in education, both at the high school and collegiate level, teaching English and leadership development. Now, 6 or 7 months ago, when we decided to design a training around atomic habits, I was actually in the process of reading it for the second time. My son and I, my son's a senior in high school this year, and in preparing for his senior year and in my transition to a new role with the VA, dealing with raising 3 teenagers and, I guess some lingering health issues, we both just felt this need to man, we need to find more structure, right? We need to figure out how we can do change better. And Atomic Habits, I'd read through it one time and I thought, this is a great tool. I just need to dive a little deeper and explore what this looks like. So I hope that today, the topics on a topic or the topics in Atomic Habits, that there will be informative for you and help you make some changes that actually make an impact, make a difference. Before we get into our objectives and agenda for the day, I want you to do something for me. Grab a piece of paper and a pen, or open up a blank Word document off the side on another screen. And you don't have to drop this in the chat, just on another piece of paper or on another screen. I'd like you to write down 1 or 2 goals, at least one goal that you're either working on right now or that you've been considering, right? That you've been thinking about putting this out there. Maybe, like I said, it's almost New Year's time, right? It's almost New Year's resolution time. Maybe there's something you're like, man, I'd like to put this new thing in place. I'd like to do this new thing or accomplish this new thing. Jot that down for me. All right, we're going to revisit that as we go through today's topic, and hopefully that will allow you to connect the information we're discussing with a real life opportunity for application. Okay, so hoping you guys have got those down, a goal. Our objectives today are pretty straightforward, right? We want to describe a process for the creation of good habits as well as breaking bad habits. And then we're going to hopefully develop an action plan here. You get your goal off to the side, right? Where you can establish some remarkable results efficiently and in a sustainable manner. Now, we've pulled 5 specific topics from Atomic Habits that we think are the most effective in allowing you to understand how this all works, right? 1 is small changes. Then we're going to talk about focusing on systems, right? We're going to understand behavior change itself. There are 3 components to it, what that looks like. We're going to talk about the habit loop, which is a psychological process that we all experience, and how the habit loop can then inform the 4 laws of behavior change. And those 4 laws are what Mr. Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, really designed to give us steps for making habits a reality, right? Take those goals, create habits, and have sustainable change. Now, that first topic, small changes. Small changes are just that small, right? The word atomic in the title of the book is intentional. An atom is microscopic, right? But it has immense power. power of the atom, the atomic bomb, atomic power, right? There's overwhelming power in this tiny thing. Well, change is the same way. And instead of shooting for the moon, that's our normal first impulse, right? Instead of swinging for the fences, we want to address this as, hey, let's make small changes, but let's make them every day. Because small changes on the daily can lead to remarkable results. So this little graphic here, if you get 1% better every day, at the end of a year, you're going to be 38 times better, nearly 38 times better than when you started. So think about that. If you were walking 1 mile today and you improved 1% every day, you'd be walking 38 miles at the end. So it's small changes over time. This is a visual representation of the same concept. If you got 1% worse every day, you basically just bottom out, right? Not too far to go. But 1% improvement every day allows you to see tremendous growth. It's kind of like the concept of compound interest, right? You're putting money away in the bank, and as you put more money away, the balance increases, so does the growth, right? The interest has a more significant impact because you've got more there. So we're going to look at making small changes. Another key component is focusing on systems. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are football fans, but I'm a big football fan, both the Baylor Bears and the Denver Broncos. So we're going to use football as an example. There are 32 NFL teams, right? They all have the same goal, right? They all have the same goal, but only one team is going to win the Super Bowl every year. What is it that differentiates them, right? If they have the same goal, and they probably even have the same goals within goals, right? They're all trying to do the same thing. They have talent-laden rosters. They spend a ton of money. They have well-developed programs, well-developed organizations, and yet you see certain coaches, certain general managers that seem to succeed consistently. Well, Atomic Habits tells us the root of that success is the systems you put in place, right? That differentiates winners from losers. It's really about the processes that you're utilizing that dictate outcomes. So let's put that in terms of the VBA, right? In terms of work here in the VA, we have thousands of claims processors in the VA. They all have really similar goals, right? We want to serve our veterans successfully. We want to do a good job, right? Maybe we want to meet or exceed our performance expectations, but there's a wide variety in performance. Even in one individual, our performance can fluctuate dramatically, right? You can't control all the variables. What you can control is your approach, the processes you have in place. Now, I want to use myself as an example. When I joined the VA 13 years ago, I came on as a rater. And those first couple of years, wait, how many of you guys have been raters? If you've been a rater, use the react button and give me a thumbs up in there. How many of you guys have been a rater or currently are a rater? Yeah, quite a few of you. Quite a few of you. So you guys know when you start out as a rater, it's tough. There's so much to know, right? All the laws, all the loopholes to the laws, all the different components to the rating process, just the myriad of medical terminology. It's tough, right? But you go through training. They teach you how to, examine this, how to reference the laws, how to get into the manual, the live manual, and look up information you need to know. Well, I went through that process, and still for the first couple of years, it's just a struggle. And everybody's got a checklist. We've got a QR checklist that you can reference, and they're informative. They can help you, have an approach that helps. But it wasn't until I took that checklist, actually I took a checklist that my Dro, who's my mentor, had designed, and I personalized it. I made it my system for reviewing a file, right? And I had a consistent approach. What was I going to look at first? What I need to check every single time on every single case so that I knew I wasn't going to make an error, right? And I had that. And over time, I didn't even have to use that checklist anymore because it became habit. But it was because I created a process that allowed me to be consistent every time as I sat down and worked through a claim. My goal from case to case didn't change. My goal was always to do the case as quickly and efficiently as possible, right? But it was the system I put in place that actually dictated the goal. And I became a much better rater after really owning that system, personalizing that system. So real quick, glance over at your goal. Think about it in terms of systems, right? As James Clear would say, we do not rise to the level of our goals, but rather we fall to the level of our systems. So if you've got a goal over there that side, instead of thinking of it as a goal, think of it in terms of systems. What habits need to be in place? What steps, what processes you need to accomplish for that kind of goal, for that kind of outcome to become a reality. All right. Now, another important element to this is just understanding behavior change in general. So psychological research tells us there's 3 components to any behavior change, right? You've got your outcomes, which we typically think of as goals. You've got your processes, which is steps we take to get to those goals. And then you've got your identity. You know, who do you become in this process? So, for example, you set a goal, an outcome of completing a triathlon. I got really into triathlons for a while, did several of them, but you set this goal. Well, okay, I'm gonna complete a short distance triathlon now. Now I need to know, how do I get there? So then you start designing some processes. Well, I got to run, I've got to bike, I've got to swim. You know, I need to incorporate training. Maybe you need to join a club that bikes together on the weekends, whatever the case is. You lay out those processes. And then in the end, if you finish that triathlon, maybe you become a triathlete, or at least you become someone who's capable of doing a triathlon or triathlon. And you know, that's the way we typically go through it. That's the normal traditional process. We start with outcomes. We start with goals, right? This is the outcome I want. Then we design processes, and then we become whoever that goal represents. Now, Atomic Habits would say we need to flip this on its head. So instead of starting with goals, let's start with identity. All right? Step 1, who do you want to become? That's the most important question you can ask. If you're going to establish a goal, some systems, some processes, you've got to start with, who do you want to become? If you want to become a triathlete, you need to say, I am a triathlete. Then identify the steps and processes that triathletes do. What behaviors do they have? And how can you implement them? How can you implement them on the daily so that it reinforces that identity that you're embracing? And then finally, the outcomes, they are what they are. We're not setting some monumental goal that we fail to achieve and then we give up, right? Because that's not what we're starting with. We're starting with the identity. Think of it as, with this example, just say, you guys want to quit smoking? The guy asks, first one, hey, you want to go out for a smoke? Nah, I'm trying to quit. Trying to quit. That guy's got a plan of attack. He has a goal, right? Second guy, hey, you want to go out for a smoke? No, I don't smoke. There's a lot of power in that statement, right? Instead of, I'm trying to quit, he has embraced the identity of a non-smoker. He said, nah, I don't smoke. Same concept can apply to literally any goal that you are trying to accomplish. Instead of addressing the goal first, let's start with the identity you need to embrace. So again, what's that goal you've got over to the side? What identity does that goal represent? That identity you need to embrace. All right, let's think about that. And you know, to put it another way, you need to choose the person you desire to be, and then we're going to prove it daily with small actions. All right. Quote from Mr. Clear: the most effective way to change your habits, you don't want to focus on what you want to achieve. You want to focus on who you want to become. All right. The habit loop. An important part of all of this is taking systems, putting them in place, and making them habitual, right? Things we do almost automatically, because that's how our brain works. If we can ingrain steps and stages and make these things, the processes, the systems we want to put in place, we make them automatic, then they can be sustainable. So let's understand this habit loop concept. Everybody's brain works the same way. We see a cue, hear a cue, right? It's a trigger. We desire something. It's the way our brain works. We have a response, and we experience a reward, right? So for example, The alarm goes off. That's the cue to trigger. Wake up, right? And man, we want to be awake. We're trying to be awake. We got to get up. I got to go to work. The response, all right, I got to get myself some coffee. And in the end result, there's a satisfaction. There's a feeling of alertness. I'm awake. You've completed that habit loop. And when you do that and you complete a habit loop, you begin to associate that reward, that feeling of satisfaction and alertness with the cue. All of this becomes intertwined. You feel this cycle, it's automatic. We want to take this habit loop and apply it to the changes we want to make. We want to take cues, identify them. We want to understand then that there's a craving to accomplish something. We want to have the right response, and then we want to make sure that we're rewarded so that those habits become effective habits. All right. The cue, again, it's a signal to your brain. You guys, I'm sure, are familiar with dopamine, the concept that when we see a cue, that there's a release of hormones, right? Now, the first time you go through a habit, the first time you go through this cycle, you experience that dopamine release with reward, right? You had the alarm clock go off, you wanted to get up, you had some coffee, and now you feel better. And there's a dopamine release. When it becomes a habit and you go through this cycle time and again, you actually experience that dopamine release as soon as you have that cue trigger, right? So your brain actually fires up in anticipation of the reward. So that's the real, bang for your buck. That's the real value in making something a habit, is that your body starts to automate the process. It sees or hears that cue and it's ready to go. You're already releasing dopamine, you're excited, you're going, right? So how do we take this habit loop and actually build it into the systems that we want to put in place, right? Those small changes we want to put in place. That's leading us to the Atomic Habits 4 laws of behavior change. All right, 4 laws. First thing we want to do is make it obvious. That's the cue. If you want to make a change, you need to make it obvious. We want to make it attractive, right? We want to do this thing. That's the craving. We want to make it easy. The response, we want to remove barriers, right? We want it to be super simple so we can, okay, let's get it done. And then finally, we want to make it satisfying. So we're going to explore all these in depth more as we go through here, but just the inverse. If you want to break a bad habit, just flip this all on its head, right? So if you want to make it invisible, right? It's a bad habit. That guy that's a non-smoker, make it invisible. Make it unattractive. Make it difficult. Put some barriers or roadblocks in the process there. Help stop you from doing it. And then finally, make it unsatisfying. Now, I mentioned the workbook that we're distributing and that Jesse had dropped in the chat. If you scroll up, I think he'll drop it in the chat again for you now. But that workbook details a lot of this information so you can revisit it, but also provides you a habit scorecard. If you want to make atomic change, it's really helpful to examine your habits as they are now, right? So you can take that scorecard, list out your daily habits, waking up, going to sleep, right? All of them, the automatic ones, the ones that are good, the ones that are bad. Don't be judgmental, don't overthink it, but detail out your daily habits. And then once you've got your habits listed out, go through and let's score. Is this a positive habit? This contributes to me being more successful and more effective as a human being, as a parent, as an employee, whatever the case is, right? Is it a negative habit? Something you'd like to eliminate? Mark it with a negative, right? And then is it neutral? It just getting up is neutral. I mean, I guess it's positive. We don't want to stay in bed all day, but there are some habits, they just are what they are, right? So it's a good way to go if you want to make big changes, I would strongly encourage you, grab that workbook and detail out your habits as you go through this process. You can identify where you really want to target your information moving forward. All right, the first law. You've got your habit scorecard. You got an awareness of your bad habits, awareness of the good habits. You know where you might want to put some new habits in play, right? So you're going to make a change. You're going to put some small steps, small habits in there to help you do better. Well, we want to make it obvious. Now, when I was going through this, I mentioned some lingering health issues that I was dealing with. I needed to work on my mobility. Diabetic for a long time, and I had surgery on both legs. And I really just I had set goals about getting out and running, getting out and cycling, some really big goals. And I came back to, you know what? Let's just start with I'm going to be a walker. I'm going to walk on the daily, every day. I'm going to walk. I'm going to log the miles. So to make it obvious, for my scenario, I leave my shoes out right where I can see them every day. I set a reminder, not just on my watch, but also in Outlook to remind me, go out and get my walk in, right? Make it obvious. There are a couple tips and tricks here for making it obvious that Atomic Habits explores. One is implementation intentions. And we've all said that, or all heard before, if you have a goal, that's great. If you write it down, much more likely to be successful. Share it with someone, much more likely to be successful. If the goal is specific, again, much more likely to be successful. Implementation intentions are just that, except we're addressing a small change, right? We're going to say, I will this habit at this time in this location. We're going to be as specific as possible. We're going to document that. Here's a new change we want to make. Here's a new habit I'm going to implement. I will the habit at the time in this location. So again, that's kind of like then me doing the reminder to go walk at a certain time, leaving my shoes out. Well, then I will go for a walk daily at 2 p.m. here at my home, right? That just being very specific, lining it out. Another way to make it obvious is called habit stacking. And this is a pretty powerful tool. Take a habit you already do, right? One that you do every day. Maybe it's that cup of coffee in the morning. And the habit you want to implement, pair them up, right? So here on the screen, my example, I make coffee at 6:10 every day. I want to start journaling. Well, I'm going to stack journaling with making my coffee. So after current habit, I will new habit. Just a simple way putting it there and then making it so that that previous habit becomes the cue or the trigger for your new habit that you want to incorporate, right? Your brain, once that's repeated time and again, your brain will start to expect you to do that new habit because you're doing the habit you already do. All right. Second law. We want to make it unattractive, or sorry, make it attractive if this is a new habit we want to incorporate, or unattractive if it's a habit we want to do away with. When we see something like attractive, lights on the screen, packaging for junk food, we're attracted to it, right? Social media leverages this against us all the time. And we actually get a dopamine rush from seeing those attractive things. So the same concept then applies to us developing a positive habit that we want to incorporate. If we can make it attractive, we're more likely to do it. Good example, connecting back again to me wanting to be a walker. I went out and bought some really nice running shoes for my walks. I don't need them, but it makes it more attractive for me. I want to go for a walk because I want to wear those awesome shoes. My wife did the same thing for her workout routine. She, Fabletics or something. She wanted to implement a new workout routine. She went out and bought some gear that for her made it much more attractive to go work out. Just change the perspective a little so that our brain is triggered to have that craving, to embrace this new habit that otherwise might feel, somewhat abrasive or unattractive to us, right? And again, the flip side is true. If you want to stop doing something, make it unattractive. Okay, make it less appealing. I heard a great tip for cutting down on screen time. With an iPhone, you can actually change the settings in an iPhone so that it's black and white. And it's so much less attractive that it just immediately has an impact on you in terms of scrolling. you won't. It's just less attractive. It doesn't engage the brain the same way. And so you're much more likely to set it aside and not, get into that doom scrolling. So again, you want to incorporate a habit, make it attractive. You want to stop doing something, make it unattractive. One way we can do this is similar to the habit stacking concept, is temptation building. So there's some things we love to do. Well, maybe we put those things with a new habit. Simple concept. You want to clear your inbox on the daily, right? Well, you can when you've cleared your inbox on the daily, you can go do your coffee break with a crossword puzzle that you love to do. Just pairing that habit that you want to get done and using another habit that you already enjoyed, something that's exciting to you and engaging for you, you pair them together and you're much more likely to get that first habit done, right? I know some folks who use this, they do like to spend some time on their phone, check their personal email, maybe check the gram, whatever it is. It's fine, right? But they use that as a reward for something they want to do work related. They're going to accomplish this task daily. When they do, they can take the 15-minute break to, engage in some of that they, that they enjoy, right? So temptation bundle, right? Throw them together. The third law is to make it easy. Now, this one's pretty powerful. There's some really good stuff here, but human nature says that we're going to do it the easiest way possible. So it's called the law of least effort. Instinctively, we're going to take the path of least resistance. It's the way our brains work. So unless there is another stimulus, something else that will direct us another way, push us in another direction, make something else a more viable path, we're going to go down that path of least resistance. So there are a couple tips here, a couple ways you can avoid this. One, make things easy through something called addition by subtraction. And two is something called the 2-minute rule, which I think you may find is a pretty powerful concept. So addition by subtraction, we want to reduce friction with our positive habits, increase friction with our negative habits, right? So removing potential barriers. For me, one of my potential barriers, a lot of us are working from home, right? Something I initially struggled with during the pandemic was having my phone here at my desk. It was just way too much of a distraction. So in reading this book, I set up a charging station across the room. So my personal phone gets plugged in across the room, and that enables me to stay more focused, right? It just removes that element from that distraction from the workplace. Another one, preparing the environment for success in general. I know a lot of folks, if you visit their cubicle in the office, it's immaculate, it's homey. They've put up pictures. They've got their workspace really laid out. Their pens are available, notepad. They have a space that's conducive to work. But if you visit their home office, it looks like a tornado just ripped right through, right? They've got paper stacked everywhere, some scissors and tape, and just it's a mess. And because it's their home office and others don't see it, they're not as worried about it. But is that environment conducive to success? Are they in a position to be successful if they have all these distractions? It's cluttered, it's muddled, right? That's tough on you. So a fantastic way to make it easy, right, to be more successful in the workplace is to make your work environment more conducive to success. 2-minute rule. Now this one's going to sound weird to some of you, I think, but hold on, go with me here. Take any habit you want, right? You want to incorporate. You look at your goal sheet over here off to the right, right? There's this thing you're working on. Okay, how do I make it attractive? How do I, right? 2-minute rule. Take any habit, shrink it to 2 minutes, and then do it every single day. When you've mastered the 2-minute version, then we can expand in complexity. I mentioned that I wanted to be more mobile. I need to work on walking, right? Well, I started with around the block. Around the block, but I'm going to do it every single day, right? It's mastering that art of just making sure that it gets done, and then I can build on it. And for me, that's been powerful because as time has progressed, and it was, I'm going to walk, it's 3,000 steps this walk, then it's 5,000 steps this walk, and it was 6,000 steps this walk, right? And I built on that and added complexity to that one simple habit. So I have another slide here on the same topic, but it's a short video. I'll let the author, Mr. James Clear, explain the 2-minute rule to you, maybe more insightful for you.
I talk about this thing I call the 2-minute rule. And the idea is to just take whatever habit you're trying to build and you scale it down to the first 2 minutes. I had a reader who did something similar to this. He ended up losing over 100 pounds. And one of the ways that he did it was he went to the gym, but he wasn't allowed to stay for longer than 5 minutes. So sounds kind of crazy, but for the first 6 weeks, he went and he showed up and he did like half an exercise, and then he would leave and go home. And to most people, they hear that and they're like, well, it's kind of ridiculous. You're wasting your time. You're not actually going to get in shape from that. But the point is, he was mastering the art of showing up. And a habit has to be established before it can be improved. Until you become the person who shows up every day, there's nothing to optimize. We're so worried about figuring out the best diet plan or the best business idea or the optimal way to, boost my bench press or whatever. We search for all these perfect plans, but we don't do the thing that is fundamental to all of it, which is just showing up. And the 2-minute rule is one way to do that.
So I found that particularly powerful. I have a couple examples, stories to share. Stephen King, one of the most prolific authors of all time, stated something very similar. He has a book on How to Write by Stephen King, or Writing by Stephen King, something along those lines. And he said the same thing, that his basic goal is just to write for 5 minutes every day, right? So I'm going to write for 5 minutes. That 5 minutes then becomes more, but he's never not going to write for 5 minutes. It may not be on the topic he really wants to write about. It may not be coherent or complete sentences, but he's going to write for 5 minutes because he's mastering the art of showing up. And for him, that's translated into being one of the most prolific authors of all time. Another example, Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, he started with, I will write one joke every day, one joke. Now, he's not going to sit down and write a whole set. He's going to write one joke every day. And I think most of us know that Seinfeld was one of the longest running television shows in history. And, he started with, again, one joke. So that habit you have off to the side, the goal that we need to break down into systems, those habits that will form those systems. Is there a 2-minute rule that could apply, a 2-minute rule that can apply there? Just consider that, because it really, can you master the art of showing up in some way, shape, or form there, and do that daily, right? Small changes daily that will compound interest, grow over time, and eventually you'll see significant growth, right? That's the 2-minute rule.
Okay.
The fourth law, we need to make it satisfying. Now, I think we all are kind of aware of this when we try to play games with ourselves to reward ourselves for doing things that we maybe don't want to do, or we're trying to incorporate. We repeat the actions that are rewarded. We stop doing things that are punished, right? It's hard sometimes. Negative behaviors, we may not see the actual outcomes of those behaviors until way down the road. Dieting is the obvious example. It's a negative behavior to have a poor diet, but you maybe don't see the results of that for months. It's really positive behavior to have a healthy diet, but again, you don't see the results for months. But if we're focused on the systems, again, can we make the system satisfying? Can we reward ourselves for the system? So in my walking, I'm going for walks. I reward myself for going walks, right? And there's a couple different ways we can do that. We can make things feel more rewarding and more satisfying. So rewards and reinforcement. The first is exactly what we're talking about. Immediate reinforcement means an immediate reward. So is there another habit or something you love to do that you can pair with this new habit that makes it more appealing, right? That immediate reward. Another way is habit tracking. My dad went to a conference where Bill Gates spoke. I don't know, it's a long time ago, but he said what gets measured gets done. It's almost one of the most essential core tenets of business. But it's also true in the home. What gets measured gets done. I bet a lot of us grew up in a home where we had a star chart for chores, right? And putting the star on the chart meant we'd accomplished something, right? It was a visual representation of our accomplishments. I mentioned Jerry Seinfeld before, one joke every day. Well, he tracked that. He tracked it really simply. He had a physical calendar on the wall, and every day that he wrote one joke, good or bad, but he wrote one joke, he crossed that day out. And in him telling it, it built upon itself. It became something that he couldn't let it go because there were so many months consecutively where he'd written a joke. Right? There is satisfaction. There's a drive that comes from seeing our constant success, from seeing us show up. One way you could do this in terms of habit tracking is taking that worksheet that we're doing on page 11 from the workbook, right? The habit scorecard. You add another column or add Monday through Friday, days of the week, and check boxes every day you accomplish that habit. If your habit is health related, there's a ton of apps out there that may be really helpful, right? If you want to track one of the myriad of Apple Health or Garmin or any of these things, there's great ways to do that. But in terms of tracking your behavior, sometimes it's best to just keep it simple, right? Use a calendar and track that you did the thing every day, because that's what we're really trying to do. Remember, we're mastering the art of showing up. We're making small changes, and we're making those small changes every single day. Over time, we're going to see that significant growth. A final way that you can make it more rewarding is incorporating an accountability partner, right? Develop relationships with people who can celebrate your successes with you. Research tells us that writing down a goal makes us more likely to be successful, but that sharing that goal with others, it's a dramatic increase in the rate of success. So the same thing can be true of these systems, these habits we're putting in place. Who can you reach out to and tell them, look, I'm looking to clear my inbox every day, right? And I think I'm going to tell you about it when I do. Just celebrate that with me, would you? And it might seem silly, but you've got relationships with folks that they will celebrate that with you. And that can have a powerful and dramatic impact on you progressing towards this healthy and successful implementation of new changes. So we've covered through all these key concepts. We've gone through small changes, right? Compound interest, the value of making a change and the dramatic impact that that can have over the course of time. You can be 38 times better in 1 year if you're improving by 1%. We talked about focusing on systems. Your goal, get rid of it. Get rid of the goal and think about what systems need to be in place there. Because we're starting with those 3 layers of behavior change. We're going to start with identity. Then we're going to look at what that identity entails. What do those people do on a daily basis? We're going to incorporate those small changes. We've examined the habit loop, how our brains work, right? The cue, the craving, the response, and the reward. So we know how our brains work and how to program a habit into that habit loop with the 4 laws, right? We're going to make it obvious, attractive, easy, right? I think you've got it. If you want additional information, I have references here. I would say go to jamesclear.com, the author of Atomic Habits. There's a 30-day, 30 Days to Better Habits email sign up. It's fantastic. Basically sends you the entire book over the course of 30 days with exercises and activities you can do to incorporate these changes. But as I said, we've sent you a workbook. Jesse's dropped that in the chat. If you scroll up, and yeah, Skillsoft. You can find the condensed version of the book there too. Questions? Again, my name is Jonathan Stoops. I'm a learning management officer here with HCS, and glad to have shared this with you today. But do we have any questions that have come up in the chat, Elizabeth or Jesse? And if not, do you guys have any questions for me? Does anybody want to raise their hand or come off mute? happy to field questions.
Thank you for that great presentation, Mr. Stoops. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Pravat. I'm a learning management officer as well with Mr. Stoops with the Office of Human Capital Services. Just wanted to touch on a couple of housekeeping things before we move on to questions, if there are any. We will be sending out a copy of the handout and the slides via email to all those who were on the attendance list today. So no need to worry about that, or you can navigate to the pinned area of the chat. And then just want to summarize while people are getting their thoughts together, Mr. Stoops, some of the things that people celebrated in the chat. We had a lot of agreement in the chat about showing up being the hardest part. Everyone was really in agreement with that thought and the 2-minute rule. A lot of people connected on their struggles with the snooze button and waking up for those early morning goals, and talked about the accountability and how important that is to keep ourselves on top of what we're trying to achieve. And then something interesting that I'm going to personally research myself is a couple of participants mentioned bullet journaling, not something I had heard of before, but sounds like they had found some success with that, and something that I think I'm curious to learn more about. So no specific questions that I had tracked throughout, but those were some of the comments that we had throughout the presentation. So thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. As we mentioned at the beginning, there is a survey, and we do really appreciate your feedback. We can't do a better job. We can't offer the right topics if you don't provide us that feedback. Certainly my performance and my desire to provide quality opportunities for these kinds of learning opportunities, as well as others, that takes you guys giving us that feedback, critical feedback, positive feedback, whatever the feedback is. Please take just literally 2 minutes to fill out the survey and let us know. Thank you so much, guys. If anybody does have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to field those, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday season coming up. Thank you.